Thank you very much, Anthony. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to see that so many have stayed to the end. I hope it will not be a bitter end. So what I'm going to do is to discuss some of the aspects that we have at the Volvo Group when it comes to private-public collaboration with the educational sector. I could have well said that the title of my talk is really collaboration of good forces, and forces that are needed more than ever, I think. So what I'll do, I'll give you a short background to the Volvo Group, so you know from where we are coming and where we are heading. Also, so I don't have to answer any questions about the Volvo Cars, because we divested Volvo Cars in 1999 to Ford Motor Company. We realized that we were number 24 in the marketplace, and we didn't find any number 25. So we sold the car part off, and we are today concentrating on commercial vehicles. That is trucks, buses, construction equipment, but we also produce parts for the aerospace engine and marine engines, and of course provide financial services to our customers. We operate a number of truck brands that we own fully, and in terms of sales in the truck area, and that goes also for the buses, we are number 2 in the world after a company which name I just slipped my mind. And that is when it comes to sales. But if you look at the number of vehicles being sold, not their value, but the number of vehicles being sold, we are number 5. And the 3 remaining parts coming in between us and the other one, which is a German company, are all Chinese. Dongfeng, you never heard about it. FAW, First Automotive Works, you never heard about it, and CNATC, Chinese National Heavy Truck Corporation. None of them are global, but I can guarantee you that they have global ambitions. If I look at the Volvo Group, we have a European heritage. We still have a fair number of our employees in Europe. But when it comes to sale, it's about less than 40% that is in Europe. Increasingly, of course, in Asia. But if I look at R&D activities, then we have about 75% of our future being carried out in Europe. That means that whatever happens on the European scene is extremely important for us. We have no intention of moving R&D to other places in the world, except that we think we need to also utilize the resources elsewhere. So we have R&D centers in the US, as well as in India and in Japan. So we see in this business area a fierceful competition going forward, particularly from India and China. So we are globally, we are active on all continents in the world. We have a supply chain that is also global. Of course, the supply chain is global. We need to work closely with our suppliers. And in that supply chain, we have the most important supplier of them all, that is the educational system. Is by far the most important supplier of them all. So that means that we cannot ignore the educational system. That means that we need to take active part in the educational system. We have done so over a long time, but not to that extent that we ought to have done this. And I'll come back to that in the end. What are the obstacles? What are the bottlenecks going forward? Because there are obstacles and bottlenecks. I'll try to start off before coming into sort of more details what we are doing and what we are doing together with other industries here in Europe. And I particularly would like to sort of focus on what is being done within the European Roundtable of Industrialists, which is a group of 50 CEO and chairmen of the largest companies in Europe. The largest companies with a European heritage, but they're all global. But let me first start with the challenges we are facing. There are many. I mean, we have the climate. I've already mentioned the competitiveness. We have the urbanization, which of course affects us being active in the transport sector, and we have the financial crisis. 2008, after the Lehman Brothers collapse, the rug was pulled beneath our feet. 60% of the sales of hard products were gone. In December 2008, the order intake for trucks in Europe was minus 18,000. You can ask yourself, how in the heck can it be minus? We had customers that simply couldn't get credit. The liquidity in the market was so low, so they couldn't get credit to pay the trucks. And I tell you, there are very few customers that pay trucks cash, and there are very few customers that buy trucks just for the fun of it. There are a few, but very limited. During that time, we saved on all costs that you could imagine, except two. We cut everything that you could imagine except our efforts in research and development, and except our engagement with the educational system. The latter is just a small part, but the R&D part is for sure not small. And we did that. We refused to cut costs in those areas because we need to look forward. We are now in the same situation where we have politicians in US that doesn't sort of agree upon anything to correct the crisis in US. I think the crisis in US is much more easy to correct, provided you have the political willingness. And then we have overspending in many areas in Europe and the debt crisis in Europe. Up until a few weeks ago, we saw nothing in the real economy of that crisis, but now we start to see hesitations going forward. So obviously, we need to learn to live in a volatile environment, and we need to learn to live in a volatile environment without forgetting our future. In our case, if I forget the financial crisis, we have real challenges that are out there which relates to congestion, city air quality, casualties on the roads, CO2, of course. Just to give you a sort of ballpark figure, congestion in Europe costs about 1% of the total GDP in Europe annually. There are 1.5 million people killed on the roads globally, 40,000 in Europe, about the same number of people in US. Then you can imagine where we have real challenges. How do we meet those? Well, we have to meet those by decreasing the environmental impact, balancing mobility and accessibility, and ensuring high safety and high security levels. That's for our small sector, or perhaps not that small, but for our sector, huge challenges. And how do we go about to meet those? What are the crucial features in meeting these challenges? Well, I would argue that it's to secure that we have an efficient R&D and innovation system, and secure that we have education systems that are necessary. Both education systems that deliver on the vocational side and educational system that deliver on the more academic side. We need to secure that we have a balance between these systems. I will spend a few minutes on the sort of more academic side on this. Because if we are going to continue to spend money on R&D, how do we take that to sales? How do we take that out to the market? Well, for sure, it's not a linear process. So you don't go from research to development to marketing and to production and marketing and sales. It's a highly non-linear process involving a number of different steps, everything from research, business planning, to standardization, concept development, industrialization, verification, production, and marketing. But is that enough to give you real innovations that helps meeting these challenges that we are facing? The answer is no. You need to secure that you have a good customer and supplier and society interaction at the top, such that you satisfy the demands. You need to secure that you have a good university interaction, because it would be naive to think that we ourselves could manage and handle all the knowledge that is out there, the necessary knowledge that we create. But at the same time, universities and the education system is essential to secure that we have a talent pipeline. Both for R&D, of course, but also to secure that we can produce them, secure that our customers have education enough. If I take trucks, for example, you need people that drive the trucks. And to drive a truck today is completely different from what it was 10, 15 years ago. You need completely different skills. So we need to secure that this talent pipeline fulfills all the demands for ourselves as well as for our customers. There is a lot of politicians out there that doesn't think we need trucks at all. They are annoying when you see them on the highways. They are big, ugly. I think they are beautiful, but at least certain brands. And they are in your way, and you can do everything with train system. But I tell you, the milk to your local grocery store doesn't come to your grocery store by train. And it doesn't come there by quantum mechanical tunneling either. It comes there with a truck. The truck doesn't necessarily have to look the same as it does today, but you need to secure that we can transport goods in and out of town, and also the residues most likely out of town. So education is, for a company like Volvo, crucial. As I said, and I'll step back a bit and tell you a little bit more about sort of a general consensus in the European industry. I have the pleasure of being associated with the European Roundtable of Industrialists. It was formed in the beginning of the 80s. It's equivalent to the Business Roundtable in US. Today, it brings about 50 CEOs and chairmen of major European companies. You have BT from UK. You have BP and BT and a number of others that are part of this. And in total, these companies sustain around 6.6 million jobs in Europe. And most of them have, as Volvo has, an R&D activity that is relatively large in proportion to the sales in Europe. So we are actively working to ensure that politicians understand issues that relates to European competitiveness from the industry. We heard before, just before, at least in this room, there was a discussion on the necessity of math, science, and technology, or more accurate, as STEM education. Even though I heard just half an hour ago that there are plenty of people educated in US with that type of education, and we have US has more scientists than they need. At least more scientists than they need to get an efficient scientific output. But I tell you, we still lack engineers. We are still looking for skilled engineers. It's not the same as you get them out through the door in any universities. Siemens has currently 2,000 positions that they have difficult to fill in the engineering field. Even in US, we have difficulties getting good, skilled engineers. And when we see the trends going forward with a declining interest, because kids doesn't want to study some of these subjects, and particularly when you look at the T, which is extremely important for us in a broader perspective, then we are also worried about the interest. And if we don't solve this issue, get people interested in technology, utilize the full potential of the young people we have today, well, then the answer will be pretty darned easy. We have to move elsewhere. And it's enough to pay a few visits to China, for example, to realize what is going on in Chinese universities in these areas. We will, of course, not do that, and it won't happen by sort of the CEO taking a decision, now we're going to move to China, because it's not that easy. But it can go relatively fast if things starts to move. So we think going forward to 2020, we will still face large competence disparities in science and technology and engineering in Europe for our needs. I'm not arguing about scientists that sort of conduct science in universities, but skilled engineers that are employable with the right skills that the European industry needs. And even further, this is from German universities, in the field of a number of fields, and the number of female students in electrical engineering, which is a crucial area for the automotive sector. Automotive sector is no longer mechanical engineering alone. In the simplest truck we sell, we have 32 computers, each with a capacity that is pretty large, each sitting in an environment that is pretty lousy. Each need to function. So we need electrical engineers. And when we look at this figure, the German system, no matter how good it is in terms of producing engineers, in certain areas like the information technology, electrical engineering, it's pretty down lousy in terms of getting women engaged. And this is more than a problem for the industry. It's also, I think, a democratic issue that one needs to address eventually. If you see pictures like that, this is the development in total number of enrolled students in Germany for electrical engineering. Well, there is a positive trend. Yeah, sure. But, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at this, this puts it into relationship to the males. If you look at the extrapolation of this straight line I just showed you, we need geological time frames before we reach a reasonable figure. This is, of course, for us totally unacceptable. I wish I knew the reason, but I know one issue that I think is extremely important. The industry has been far too inactive in arguing and working together with the educational system, explaining what it's all about. Far too inactive. And we need to change that. I'm not saying that that will dramatically change these figures, but we can simply not afford to go forward with a pace like this. Now this is Germany, currently the industrial engine in Europe. We have the same situation in a number of other countries in Europe as well. I think there are very few exceptions to these figures. The slope might be different. So obviously, from my point of view, we have a a real big issue. So ERT have concluded that, well, we cannot simply sit and wait. We need to at least argue for that there should be a larger interaction between different stakeholders, and they need to coordinate their efforts. I wish that you had conferences like this in all countries in Europe as well as in US. But I also wish that at these conferences, half of the people would be people from the business sector, not necessarily from the industry sector, but surely from the business sector. So Anthony, you have a huge task to next year to secure that you have an audience that are containing more people from the business sector. And I can volunteer that we will be willing to help to secure that at least ERT companies would join. But we need to spread these efforts in Europe, because I think it's an excellent initiative. All politicians have visions nowadays. We have the Vision 2020 for Europe. Sustainable, inclusive, and smart growth will take us to the lead. ERT has also a vision and a follow-up system. If you go in on europeontrack.eu, you will see how we monitor what the politicians are doing. But the vision of ERT has 5 pillars. It talks about sustainable growth, global markets, innovation power, and education and culture as the driving force for productivity, and a transparent, reliable, and decisive governance structure. And we witness the lack of that every day, and this is urgent that they get their act together and solve the issues. So, in the educational field, the recommendations are that we really should build national platforms to support initiative for interactive interaction between business and schools on all levels. And I'll come back to how that could be done and what are the obstacles. Support lifelong learning, of course, and really to build stronger links between the public and private sectors in education, and increased mobility within Europe. It's easy to say, it's easy to present the vision, leave it to politicians, and go home and deliver quarterly reports. But as I showed you with these slides where you saw the product development leading to products, we are not looking only for next quarter. We are looking to 2025, 2030 with our product planning, product development. And every reasonable company that really wants to secure their place in the global market has to do that. We need to be prepared, even though I will not be there, most of my colleagues will not be there, but we aim to be there 2025, 2030 with good products suited for the market at that time. That means we cannot let go of the educational system because we need to secure that we can carry out this development. Most of our roadmaps will probably be wrong. Doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter because we correct them as we go along. Doesn't really matter. But if you lose the ability to look long term, lose the ability to really do these type of roadmaps, then I tell you, you will be lost. So what has ERT done? So what can industry do? Well, I think we can contribute to understanding change. I think we can contribute to showing solutions in practice, that is work-related content in the education. We can inform on the use of different subjects in daily work. We can show the road models. We can extend network to support teachers as well as students by giving access to different perspectives experience and knowledge, and we can help building a new leadership. I think supporting teachers is a very, very good way. Not because that the corporate world have pedagogical skills that surpasses the educational world, not at all. Not at all. But we have different perspectives, we have different roles, and we address different problems. So from a business model perspective and getting return of your investment, the most effective way is really to engage with teachers. Engage with teachers, building networks so they get to know each other. And I often get the question, how can you do that? You need to have your engineers out there supporting teachers. Well, the issue is that we already have those resources. Every company has those resources. We spend a fair amount of money on continuing education for our employees. When it comes to communication, which I've heard several times during this day, is an important asset for people leaving the school system. It's extremely important in our daily work. So when it comes to communication, if you're out there, if you're standing in front of students or if you're standing in front of teachers, of course, you train on that aspect. So the resources are basically there. I'll come back to some of the obstacles later. So we took the initiative. Actually, we looked what is being done in Europe. And there is a lot of different initiatives. In Germany, one has something called the Wissensfabrik. In Holland, JetNet. There's a lot of different initiatives. They have a few issues in common, a few problematic issues in common. The scale-up issues, about 100 million students in the educational system in Europe today, so the scale-up issue is, of course, an issue. The evaluation part is also an issue. None of them really do evaluations. What does this really mean in the longer context? What does this really mean for the business sector? And we lack research in that area. So anything we can do to support universities to engage in doing that type of research. Because industry is used to measure, and what gets measured gets done. So I think that is an important area. And the third problem, they don't learn from each other. There are very little learning in between these initiatives. Conferences like this could help, and there are other issues that could help. So we got in touch with the European Union. We had lengthy discussion with the European Union. We talked with something called the European SchoolNet, which is an organization founded by the Minister of Education in Europe, not only EU, but also outside EU. They were started as a project really to bring IT tools into the educational system. Now they do much more. So we started saying, well, we should at least in Europe coordinate the activities that we have ongoing, since we have so many. We don't need to start new. We need to coordinate them to see to that they are based on needs analysis, to see to that they are based on research, as I also mentioned, evaluation, see to that they conduct a common development, and see to that they are a repository for best practice. So coordinate and support and disseminate and stimulate. So we, after a lot of work, convinced the European Union that they should put up at least resources to help getting this off the ground. And we engaged European SchoolNet. And now we have something called Ingenious, which is really something focusing on the interaction between business sector and the educational system. It's run by the European Schoolnet, and you have the web page here. It's just taken off this summer. We spent the spring discussing the contracts with the Commission after they have granted this, but now we are really up running. And it's coordinated by the European Schoolnet. And these are the partners currently involved. And you can see that there are a number of companies, there are a number of organizations, and there are companies, not only European companies, Sabancı Group, which is a group from a holding group in Turkey. Of course, the proof is still in the pudding, and we have just put the pudding in the oven. But this is really something which we think at least could make a small contribution to developing the business-university interaction in Europe. I yesterday had a meeting with Andrula Vassiliou, who is the commissioner for DG EAC, for Educational and Culture. She really urged for seeing to that we get meetings like the one that we just experienced on a regular basis in Europe, to really see to that the stakeholders meet. The European Union has created two forums. One is called University Business Forum, and the other one is called University Education Forum, just to get stakeholders to meet, to talk the same language, to show respect for each other, and to increase the knowledge of each other's day-to-day work. And I think there is a lack of knowledge, both in the educational system, on the industry conditions, and I can tell you, in the industry on the premises for the educational system. And I think that is one of the bottlenecks that we need to overcome. So let me then spend a few minutes on some of the hinders on the road forward. Before doing that, I've told you nothing about what Volvo does, but Volvo is engaged in a number of projects. We have two schools that we run together with municipalities, focusing both on vocational and more academic education, that we own together with two municipalities in Sweden. We are taking part in a number of different initiatives, and we have done so for a long time. But it's not enough, and we have been engaged in starting a project within Sweden focusing on exactly this area as well, involving many companies. But what are the problems? Well, I think there are some reluctant attitudes in the educational system. There are countries in Europe where this is really a no-no. You can't come into, I mean, we have, you saw on, when you didn't see on the map, but we have large activities, not only in Sweden, but in Germany, in Poland, in Belgium, and not to mention France, where we produce Renault trucks and have a large development part. In France, the educational system really doesn't allow you into them, because they think that you should make advertisement for your products. And even when we have products like trucks, and there are no school kids that buy a lot of trucks, and neither do the teachers. We are simply not let into the school system. On the university side, it's much better. I'm not saying on the university side we have no problem, but on primary, secondary, and upper secondary level, no. And of course, if we are going to get out of this mess we have created in Europe right now, we need to secure that also that all countries have a good educational system. There is also reluctant attitudes in industry and also low awareness. I saw one presentation this morning saying one of the bottlenecks is that you have to get buy-in to top management. That is absolutely correct. And that's the easy part, I think. The problematic part is to also get buy-in to middle management. because then middle management is squeezed from all kind of directions, not only from the top and from the bottom, but all kind of directions you can imagine they are squeezed from. But, as I said before, we already have the time available, at least to let people out into the school systems, let school kids into our laboratories, and have a structured way of approaching and making friends with teachers. The economic crisis worries me a lot, that we will have governments cutting in educational budgets. It's a simple thing to cut in. I'm soon ready, Anthony. It's a simple thing to cut in, but it's a stupid thing to cut in. If we don't make a coordinated effort in communicating this message to the politicians we have in each country, I think it's our obligation to do that. And then lack of leadership, funding of new initiatives and research related to these issues. I think the Commission will be quite committed to go forward to really fund research related to understanding the situation and devising ways of going forward. And I think that is really, really needed. Even though the industry doesn't have any researchers that are really committed to this, but we can at least provide case studies and provide real life conditions. I also often get a question, but you don't know what you need. You have no clue what you need. Probably in terms of skills. It's probably true. Probably true. Does it really matter? I think at least Europe should push for development and not only pull based on needs. I think that is crucial, because I think also Europe needs to look ahead and see how we want the development, and really secure that all these nice visions get down in the basement, and we start to work on those and roll up our sleeves and get to work. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.